Our objective is to create a better ecosystem for children within the sector. You may be aware that there are over 4,000 children in state care and thousands of others in the foster care system connected to state care. We recognize that as a government, we have a duty to these children to keep them safe, to educate them, and to ensure that their goals and aspirations can be fulfilled. Fundamentally, it is our duty to protect the rights of all children in Jamaica, but more importantly, children in our custody, we have a higher duty to them. Though we have a role as a government to protect and to secure the rights of our children, we cannot neglect to recognize the role of parents, community members, and the wider society in dealing with the issues of children. We've seen several incidents over the last few months where persons within the society have been abusing children. Some of them have come to us via the Children's Registry, some have come to us via Sisoka, some of them have come through direct calls to myself and Ms. Gagega and other members of the Cpfsa. A lot of these cases are harrowing. A lot of these cases are traumatic. But the good thing about these cases is that by persons reporting them to the authorities, whether it be the police, the Cpfsa, or any person in authority, these children are getting the assistance they need. It brings me to one of the more important things that we need to speak about today and we need to continue talking about. And it is the importance of reporting wherever you see something happening to a child. The police cannot act without a report or unless they see it themselves. The Cpfsa cannot intervene unless they know what is taking place in the families, in the communities. And I believe every Jamaican has a duty to protect our children. It's not just a duty of the government alone. So the primary government agency, as I said before, that is responsible to secure the interest of children both within state care and outside of state care is the Child Care and Protection Agency. I have been Minister of State for about 6 months, and over that period of time I have been working along with Minister Favour Williams, who is my senior minister, as well as the executives and the head of the Cpfsa to look at how we can make the state of the Jamaican child better. One of the major changes that we're seeking to perfect in the child care ecosystem is the 0 to 3 policy. What this policy says is that whenever a child between 0 to 3 comes into contact with the state care apparatus, we do not want that child to end up in a child care facility. We believe that the capacity exists within the foster care system, within the system where persons who are prospective adopters, to place that child in the arms of a loving family. So we call it from cribs to loving arms. That proposal has already been drafted, the plan has already been drafted, and it is now on its way through the system to go to cabinet to ensure that we have the support of the executive of the country to ensure that this is a long-term strategy to protect children 0 to 3 from engaging with the children's home system. Persons may wonder, why is this important? The fact is, a child 0 to 3 requires a significant amount of attention and care and love. And based on all the studies that have been done globally, a child care facility is not the best place for a baby. It is not that we are criticizing child care facilities, but the reality is that a baby in a child care facility will not get 24 hours attention because there are other children who are there that need attention as well. So if we transfer the responsibility from the child care facility to a family, where let's say you have 1, 2, or 3 children with parents, with other support persons within the home, that child has a better sociological relationship, which improves that child's ability to become a fulfilled and empowered member of the society. So that is something that we're committed to. At the function to honor children in state care who have done very well at their CSEC and CAPE subjects and are matriculating to sixth form or to universities, I announce that it is the objective of the government that no child should be designated with a detention order and placed in a penal institution without charge. I'm happy to announce that the Cabinet submission has already been done to amend Section 24 of the Child Care and Protection Act to remove the discretion of judges to place children in penal institutions via detention order without charge. Why is this important? Not every child who goes before the courts is a criminal. Some of them are runaways, which is not a crime. Some of them are truants from school, which is not a crime. Some of them are engaging in certain physical behaviors with other children, which is not a crime, depending on the circumstances. However, the law currently allows a parent to bring a child before the court and tell the court that they are unable to control this child. And in some cases, that court has used the discretion to say, well, if you can't control the pitney, we're going to send him go a place of safety or a penal institution. Where this child who, let's say, is a runaway, is now going to interact with a child who probably is charged with murder. Is going to interact with a child who is now probably charged with rape. A child who proper psychosocial intervention could reform is now being placed in a facility with what some would call hardened criminals. And we can all understand the implications of that. So this government has decided that after so many years of discussing it, we're going to do it. And I will say to you that very soon we will remove that section, that part of Section 24 that gives judges the discretion. I would also like to mention that as a part of the legislative reform, you would be aware that in 2013, now Minister of State Kamina Johnson-Smith moved a private member's motion in the Senate to look at reforms to the Child Care Protection Act, the Sexual Harassment Act, and several other pieces of legislation. Many years later, I think it was a year and a half ago, the Joint Select Committee finished its deliberations and presented a report. We have taken on that report as a new Minister and Minister of State, as well as the Cpfsa. We brought the amendments together in a cabinet submission, and very soon we will be amending the Child Care and Protection Act to take into consideration the amendments of the Joint Select Committee, as well as other significant amendments that need to take place in that regard. I would also like to announce that children in state care have not been left out of the tablet distribution program, where recently Ms. Gage-Gray advised that almost 2,000 children have received tablets. Some of them were bought directly by the government, others were bought through partnerships with other organizations. I'm also aware that the IDB is also going to be giving us some tablets, so that is something to talk about and to be happy about. One of the important initiatives that we are seeking to enact in our management of the system is regulation of child care facilities. Both child care facilities within the government system, we have 9, and child care facilities which are run by members of the private sector. When I became Minister of State, I gave the Cpfsa the mandate to ensure that we have a robust licensing regime to ensure that all our child care facilities are fulfilling the requirements to be safe spaces for our children. We did have some challenges where some of the homes were not able to fulfill the requirements. Some were not able because of the pandemic, where the services that they would call upon to make themselves licensable were not available to them in the quickness that we would expect. while some of them had institutional challenges, I asked the head of the Cpfsa to work with these homes to give them an extension to see how many we can get to fulfill the requirements. And I can report to you that the Cpfsa has advised me that we have moved from about 40% of the homes fulfilling the licensing requirement to now, about 2 months later, 70% of the homes fulfilling the requirement. But I am not happy with 70%, because it's not just 70% of the homes that children live in. And so I'm asking the Cpfsa to work doubly hard to work with these homes to ensure that we have 100% of the homes fulfilling the requirement. Because the challenge is, if it is that they don't fulfill the requirement, Minister Favour Williams nor myself will be signing the license. And if a home doesn't have a license, then a home cannot operate. We do not want another Walker's Place of Safety. We do not want another home where the systems are not in place to protect our children. And while we're not being punitive at this time, we're encouraging all members of the childcare ecosystem to recognize that we're very serious about accountability. We're also about to embark on the audit of all the homes, both government and private homes. I was advised by Mrs. Gage-Gray that we put out a tender, and we did get a positive response to the tender, and now we're going through the process of having the auditors go into the homes to look at how they're managing their finances, how they're taking care of their children in terms of nutrition, in terms of education, in terms of the environment the children live in terms of the human resource requirements of these homes. This audit will be the platform on which we will base the new vision for the grading of homes, an objective system where we can make a determination as to the type of intervention that is needed for a particular home. I would like to also mention that the Cpfsa continues to do work in terms of managing incidents that have taken place within our homes. The Cpfsa has a first responder program, which is a rapid intervention program that attends to the psychosocial needs of children who are either directly impacted or witness to a major event such as accidents. And last week, Ms. Gage-Gray, you received a new motor vehicle to assist with the first responders program. Thank you to the IDB and thank you to Toyota Jamaica for that initiative. In 2021, 54 incidents were responded to between January and now. 2 of the issues responded to is the story of 6-year-old Michael Allen from St. Anne who was mauled by dogs. I would like to also report that we have spent a lot of time working with the family in ensuring that young Michael has the support he needs. I will not go into details as to the level of support that we have given to the family, but I will say that it has been significant. We have been also providing counseling for the family and also assisted in the infrastructural development of where the child lives. We've also responded to the 2 girls who drowned in St. Elizabeth, and we assisted in funeral expenses and also continue to provide counseling for the family through our Children and Family Support Unit. We continue to shape the child protective landscape in Jamaica, and since the successful completion of this phase 1 merger of the Cpfsa, which is now the Cpfsa between the CDA and the OCR, which is the Office of the Children's Registry, we're now about to embark on phase 2. This change will see an additional 150 social workers employed to meet the growing needs of the sector. One of the biggest criticisms, one of them that came out of the Capri report, is that we do not have enough social workers. And in doing our organizational review, that is something that was recognized a long time ago. We're happy to announce that we're very far in the process of moving to phase 2 of the merger, and that phase 2 includes the employment of an additional 150 social workers. And a partnership with HEART has been formed to provide training and certification for all staff members working in residential child care homes. The issue of street children is one that is also of concern to many Jamaicans, and we can announce that after a study that was conducted in 2019 by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, we are in the process of crafting a plan of action to deal with children working on the streets. It will further strengthen existing programs and ensure the best interests of all children in Jamaica are protected, and represents our commitment and dedication to ensure that we meticulously address the cross-cutting factors that affect the development, protection, and survival of children right across the island. We wish to also update the public that Jamaica recorded its first successful abduction case in the courts. Well, I wouldn't say we recorded our first abduction case. I would say we resolved our first abduction case in the courts, that of a 3-year-old boy who was abducted by his mother, who lives in Jamaica. The child was ordered to be returned to his father in the United States. For background, we would be aware that the Hague Convention on Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction is the main international agreement that covers international parental child abduction and provides a process through which a parent can seek to have their child returned to their home country. Jamaica ratified the Convention on the Intercountry Abduction of Children, with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency being named the central authority. The Cpfsa has carried out all the relevant actions to ensure that the ratification is operationalized and have established a central authority which operates out of the Cpfsa Adoption Services Unit. We have identified also the upgrading of facilities as a primary objective over this period, and we call the program, and it's a key priority in the strategic plans and policies of the government and the Cpfsa. We have commissioned several internal and external safety reviews and audits to assess the current facilities, including any safety or security concerns, and are making recommendations to central government to make improvements. One of the areas identified is the upgrading of fire safety equipment and provision of training for children and staff in fire safety. This recommendation is being actioned through a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education and Supreme Ventures Foundation for the upgrading of fire safety equipment in children's homes across the island to the tune of $40 million over 3 years. A total of 15 homes have been completed, with another 15 being undertaken currently. We're also exploring the concept of installing solar energy solutions in some of our homes. This concept paper is being prepared by the Cpfsa and being disseminated to the public to see what interest they are in providing the solutions. We're also looking at creating a model child care facility at the Maxwell Park Children's Home. Jamaicans would be aware that the Maxwell Park Children's Home is one of the more challenged homes because it has some of the more challenged children. Along with building a therapeutic center there, it is the medium-term objective to build a center of excellence at that home, which will be defined as the best child care facility in Jamaica, where children can go and can be almost guaranteed the best service, and it can act as an example to other homes, public and private, where persons can come and get training and can actually see what Jamaica believes should be in the best interest of our children in state care. That is a plan that is being formulated by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, as well as the Cpfsa. We're also awaiting the final report and evaluation from the USAID on a project that was conducted called A Pathway for Children Exiting State Care. The concept paper is to be drafted for submission to the Ministry of Education. One of the more important aspects of the work that we do in the childcare ecosystem is education. While we are taking care of children, we are providing resources for family in need, we recognize that public education continues to be one of the strongest tools, the most effective tools in helping parents, children, and the wider society understand, one, the rights of children, where you can go to get children the help that they need if you know that they're being abused, and where you can get help yourself if you feel that you cannot manage. We are currently crafting, with the help of multilateral agencies such as UNICEF, a long-term good parenting campaign. The aim of the campaign is to encourage good parenting techniques within the society, with particular focus on dealing with the issue of corporal punishment. We believe that we should build them up, don't beat them down. You would be aware that over the last several weeks, especially with the conversations about gender-based violence, there has been a renewed call within the Parliament and within the society for us to deal with the issue of violence in general and violence specifically targeted at vulnerable groups: children, women, the disabled. We believe that any society that continues to promote the use of violence as a means of discipline is a society which will continue to have violence being used as a means of solving its problems. Our duty as child care advocates and professionals is to craft the necessary policies to ensure that the society is led in a positive way towards behaviors that contribute to the holistic development of all persons within the society. Hence, it is our focus to teach good parenting to all our citizens over the next 10 to 15 years so that we can contribute to turning the corner on the issue of violence as a means of resolving conflict within the society. I'd like to also announce finally, because we're running out of time, that a mass quarantine facility has been modified at the former Windsor Girls' Home in St. Anne. This facility is the first of its kind in the child care system and will give the Cpfsa the opportunity to protect our children incoming from being exposed to whatever exists within the child care ecosystem, for example, corona. The Windsor Girls' Home property is finished, but we still have a little bit more work to do, for example, like security, Ms. Gage-Gray. Yes, and staffing. The reason why this is important is that when a child comes into the child care system, we do not know, for example, if this child has corona. And many of our homes do not, especially our private homes, they never contemplated a pandemic like corona when they were building their facilities. So many of them do not necessarily have purpose-built isolation units. So what will happen now is that when a child comes into the system, the first place they'll probably go is the Windsor. Well, I can't call it Windsor Girls' Home anymore because it won't be only girls there. The Windsor Place of Safety, or the Windsor Home, where they will be assessed, not just for corona, but also psychosocially. And then we will have an opportunity to place them in a home for the period that they're interacting with the state. I would like to close by thanking all the social workers who continue to sacrifice themselves on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, to protect our children. I would like to thank also our partners, the police, particularly Sissoko. I'd like to thank the Office of the Children's Advocate. I would like to thank our guidance counselors. I would like to thank all well-thinking citizens who continue to tell what they know. And I want to reiterate again, we have been working really hard to improve the system. Myself, the Cpfsa, persons from civil society, the police. But we cannot do it alone. Unless we have the cooperation of every single member of Jamaican society, we will not be successful in protecting our children. 1-888-PROTECT Call us, let us know if you see anything, if you hear anything, if you know anything. Protecting our children is our duty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. We'll now ask Mrs. Gage-Gray to do her statements. This include the achievements as well as the priorities and challenges, and then that will be followed by Mrs. Stacey and Hewitt-Lindsay, who will speak more about child abuse. Mrs. Gage-Gray.
Minister Morgan, colleagues from the NCR and from our investigation unit, Stacey and Warren, members of the media, pleasant good afternoon. I'll firstly just give an overview of the role and responsibilities of the Cpfsa, and then we'll highlight a few of the achievements over the quarter that we have achieved. So the Cpfsa is an executive agency under the portfolio of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and we are guided by both local legislative framework as well as international conventions that Jamaica has signed onto. Our mandate is to provide care and protection for children deemed to be in need of care and protection. These are children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected, or otherwise at risk. And we provide services for them in the several programs of the agency. We work very closely, as was mentioned by Minister before, with several stakeholders, primarily the Jamaica Constabulary Force, specifically SISOCA. We work with the courts, Victim Services Division, Office of the Children's Advocate, other social agencies, ministries, agencies, and departments, as we provide services to children and their families. The families we serve are predominantly from the lower socioeconomic background. These families are having significant difficulties at times in caring for their children, as well as children within those local settings are subject to abuse as well. We have just over 500 staff members serving in our various programs across the country, operated through 4 regions. And we have, which is an advantage to us because we do have a reach island-wide where officers are able to respond from an investigative perspective almost immediately to reports that are received by us. We have just under 200 social workers, and as Minister stated, phase 2 of the merger activities should see us getting some additional resources so that we can, 1, reduce the cycle time to action cases reported to us, as well as 2, reduce the caseloads that our officers manage presently. We have just over 4,500 children in direct care, but we have several others who access our services through our Children and Family Support Unit. There are approximately 52 childcare facilities, 9 of which are managed exclusively by the government, and we provide support services to these facilities. These facilities are monitored by our monitoring officers. We do have the Board of Visitors in place who visit these facilities and file reports so that we can take action on the issues that are presented. We have a budget of approximately $2.9 million from the Consolidated Fund, and we work with these resources in the interest of our children. Billion. I'm sorry. In 2017, we introduced the child case management system called SOHIMA, and this, through the support of USAID, have provided us with the ability to track our client information and to manage caseloads across the platform. This is being expanded to have reports through the National Children's Registry, and we have been charged by our minister to look at whether or not we could add a customer satisfaction and customer interface where reports could be fielded directly into the system, and we are examining that as we speak. Our organization work and is linked to the Jamaica National Development Plan and Vision 2030, and we are taking our strategic actions that would see to the children in our care and the children in the wider Jamaican society being safeguarded and being allowed to achieve their full development. I'll just turn a little to some activities and some achievements that we have over the last period. Through our court management services, so our officers are in the children and family courts daily, and we also get referrals from the Supreme Court for matters relating to children that might be at that level where we field those reports. Through the Court Services Division, we have conducted approximately 1,000 visits over the period to conduct social inquiry reports for courts. We have attended 735 court sessions across the sector. Minister mentioned the First Responder Program. This is a program where we are doing preventative work once there is a critical incident within communities. So it could be that a mother has been killed, a father has been killed, there has been a fire in the community, and we go as part of the first responders with the police and victim services division to render services to the families and children who might be impacted in those regards. Our Children and Family Support Unit continues to provide services to families, and it must be noted here that these families are not necessarily families who would have gone through the court system, but those who would have access to our services, and we have assessed that through counseling support, through referrals to allied services, they can get some benefits. And we have seen over 3,600 children island-wide through the Children and Family Support Unit. Our partners here that we refer children and their families to: Ministry of Labor and Social Security for their PATH program, Ministry of Education to get children back into school or to have them placed, the National Council on Drug Abuse for those children who need that intervention. So we have several partners that we work very closely with as we seek to provide the services to our children. Our monitoring officers continue to visit the institutions and to ensure that the standards of care for residential child care facilities are adhered to. They have done a total of 546 visits over the period. For placement, this is where children are coming into care, or children within care are moving across programs. There were 241 assessment reports that were received by the placement unit, and we have had requests over the period for 354 emergency placements. And these requests are either made by our social workers or investigators or by the police who would have come into contact with children and is seeking a safe space for them. In our foster care program, we have placed over 209 placements into our approved foster parents. And through family reintegration, we have reintegrated 121 children with their families. So the agency continues to support our children through the programs that we operate. Finally, I'll make reference to our psychology unit. We have 4 psychologists at the master's level and 2 social workers who work within the unit. We have 2 mobile units. We just got an additional one, so that's 3 in all that is providing services. And this unit has served us very well. During this period of the pandemic, we have seen where a number of our children are requiring psychosocial intervention. Over the period, they have been able to see, for counseling sessions, some 5,495 children across the agency. And the Smiles Mobile have screened about 437. So this is just a brief of some of the activities that we have, and we will field other questions that you might have when we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gage-Gray. I'll now invite Mr. Warren Thompson. He's the Deputy Registrar at the National Children's Registry. Warren will just give us a good synopsis of what is happening with missing children, as well as look at some of the stats regarding child abuse across our country.
Minister Morgan, Mrs. Gage-Gray, CEO, other colleagues and representatives from the media, good afternoon. The National Children's Registry is a creature of the Child Care and Protection Act and was established to be the main point of contact for persons wanting to make reports of child abuse and neglect. Our main mandate is to receive, record, and assess and refer for investigation all reports of child abuse. And since 2013, we have also had responsibility for the Ananda Alert System, which is the Missing Children's Intervention, as many of you know. We're going to just start by looking at what we have been seeing in terms of child abuse over the, let's look at 2020, but I want to put it in context for you, yes. Since 2015, we have been having a gradual reduction in the number of reports received, and we believe that we are plateauing at anywhere between 12,000 and 13,000 reports per year. 2020, however, we saw a significant reduction, I would say, in the number of reports received, and we have speculations about why this may be so. Certainly, one main thing is that the persons who would normally see children and report the incidents of abuse are not seeing them. The teachers are not seeing them. The Sunday school or church members, other concerned citizens are not seeing them. And we believe that given that the home is the main site for child abuse, that many children are still victims of abuse. And this is why we have been encouraging children to, if they can, self-report. And we have been putting out there our reporting mechanisms, or the means through which reports can be submitted. The minister gave you the 888 Protect line, or WhatsApp number 8782882. Persons can email us at report@childprotection.gov.jm. Or if persons want, they can also send us a please call me, and someone will return the call. And of course, we have an office in every parish, so persons may feel free to visit those offices. We are currently analyzing our 2019 data. We'll be finished with that soon, while we're entering our 2020 data. But I want to show you a graph, a chart from 2018, just to give you an idea of what is happening across the island. And I'm comfortable showing you 2018 because I doubt 2019 will be much different. Because when we look at 2016 and 2017, it is the same thing. When we look at the number of child abuse reports received in each parish, as a proportion of the child population in that parish, we see that St. Anne and Westmoreland stand out, followed closely by Manchester and St. James, and then by Trelawney. So many persons might be wondering why we don't see more for Kingston and St. Andrew. But because of the size of the population in Kingston and St. Andrew, as a proportion, it is not that great. So we are going to be paying special attention, or we have been actually, special attention to what is happening in St. Anne and Westmoreland. We can go to the next slide. We're looking more at the 2019 and 2020 data just to give you a comparison. As I said, we had a reduction overall for 2020. But the trends remain the same. Most reports are received for children presenting with behavioral problems and children who were victims of neglect. I don't think I have to spend much time on this, and our investigations manager will go into much more detail But I think in terms of trends, it is very much consistent. Next slide. For 2020, and well, I give data up to January, February, and March 2021, you will see that when the pandemic occurred, or when we had the first case, we saw a significant reduction, I would say, in the number of reports received. And although the numbers have increased since then, we have not got back to where we were coming from. So when we started at 2020, January and February, we had over 1,000 reports. And then in March, we fell to 800. Certainly in April, when we started talking about lockdowns and so on, the number of reports reduced significantly to 366, which is the lowest that it has ever been, I believe, at least since the first year of the registry's operations in 2007. When we opened back up in June, the numbers came up, but we have not gone back to the pre-COVID-19 figures. If you look at January, February, and March 2021, we are still between 800 and just over 900 reports. I want to turn now to talk about the issue of missing children. And as the Minister said, this has been very much on many persons' minds, particularly because of what we have been seeing in the media, a number of cases of particularly women who have been reported missing, and then either we never hear from them again, or their bodies have been found. And of course, we just observed 1 year of Jasmine Dean's disappearance. So overall, when it comes to children, since 2013, I would say we have been having a gradual reduction in the number of reports made for missing children each year. So although we have been seeing the alerts going out and persons are getting very excited or incensed because of that, we have actually been observing a reduction in the number of child abuse reports. It is good, but we're still not where we should be, because for a country of our size, we still have too many children being reported missing each year. In 2020, the number reduced again. We received just over 1,000 reports, and we're down from 1,543 for 2019. But as I said, we've been gradually reducing. We're coming from over 2,000 from 2013 and just before that. So we have been gradually trending down. It is still a cause for concern. Our return/recovery rate has pretty much remained consistent. Sorry, I was still on the previous slide. The return/recovery rate has been pretty much consistent, and the recovery rate is the one in orange, that's the one below. So although the numbers have gone down, the two lines have not met. So we still have almost the same proportion of children who are coming home, still coming home, and those who are still missing, still missing. We do have a recovery rate of about 85 to 90% for each year, but I've always said it and I will continue to say it, it is still not good enough. Because when you think about 1,500 children and a recovery rate of 90%, sorry, that's 9 out of 10, we're still talking about 150 children that we can't account for. And for a country of our size, it is still too much. We can go to the next slide. So for 2020, our monthly, well, I'm looking at 2018, 19, and 20, and I gave some data for 21. Our monthly missing children report figures, you will see in green, that's the line in green, that's 2020. It is lower than all the others, reflecting what I said earlier. You will see some spikes in the data. There are some periods of the year when we generally see spikes. November, we usually see a spike. We're not sure why just yet. In July, May, June, July, somewhere around that time, we usually see a spike as well. In May, Child's Month, a lot of persons who probably would not report before will report. July, the children go off on holiday, many of them leave home and then eventually come back. And November is the one that I'm not yet able to explain what exactly is causing the children to go. I just want to say that when we talk about missing children, we're talking about 3 different categories of children. Children who voluntarily go, so those are our runaways, which make up the bulk of the missing children. And then we have the cases of abductions, I'm unable to say what proportion of missing children are actually cases of abductions. And then we have what we call the otherwise missing children, who may get lost or may get disoriented and so on. So those are the main types or the main categories of missing children that we see. Now, because most of them are runaways, some people get desensitized and uncaring. We don't want that, because for us, every missing child is a child who is in need of care and protection, whose vulnerability has significantly been increased. So we want all of Jamaica, the public, the media, everybody to partner with us to help us to bring our children home. We can look at the next slide. So in terms of missing children, this is I'm giving you the status. So in green, you will have those children who returned or recovered, which you can see between 85, well, I'm not seeing the figures there. 2021 would be lower because we just have 2 months. In red, you will have those children who are still missing. And then there is a small, well, you can't see the color because it's so minute, usually less than 1%, those whose bodies were found. So those are the ones that we can confirm are dead. In terms of figures for 2019, and for 2019, we had 5. I believe for 2020, we had 5 as well. For 2021, we have not had any, and we hope that the year will end that way, that we will not have a child reported missing and then being found dead. We can look at the next slide. Thank you. So this is the sex of the children who have been reported missing. You can see in yellow we have females and in purple we have males. If I were to give you a profile of the missing child in Jamaica, I will tell you it is a female between the ages of 13 and 17. That's really where the bulk of the missing children reports fall. Most of the children who are running away from home are girls between 13 and 17. We do have, boys, of course, and we do have children from other age groups, but the bulk, and when I say bulk, I mean more than average, is within the age range that I just gave, and certainly are females. And I think I can break there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We'll take Stacy and Lindsay, who will just do a little synopsis so that we can go to your questions and responses.
Minister, CEO, colleagues, and friends, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. Are you able to hear me well? Okay. Okay, so just a general overview of what is happening in terms of what we are finding after investigating the cases that come directly from the National Children's Registry. So, can I get that? Okay. All right, so if you look at these numbers, we're going from 2013 to 2020, and for us it's showing an increase. So of cases gradual, well, each year it's increased straight up to 2018. I want you to zone in on 2017, 2018, and 2019. So for instance, the National Children's Registry would have reported 12,809 for 2017, and we have a little more. 2018, they reported 12,033, and we have 15,464. The reason for that too is because we get cases from externally, but mostly prior to the merger, we were separate entities, and that we had different processes in how we functioned. So in 2017, after the merger, it was an opportunity for us to get rid of some of our backlog cases. So a lot of those came from they didn't receive it in that year, but it came to us in investigation. So we got a lot of not just cases received for the year, but the backlog cases, and then it continued to clear up after that. All right. In 2020, we are basically the same place now because our numbers are almost identical for what we've received in 2020. So what that tells you is that the backlog issue has been addressed significantly following the merger. We are coming from a few thousand, the figure escapes me now, before the merger to backlog being almost non-existent. Since the merger, we have, I'm digressing from what I have here and I always do this, sorry about that. Since the merger, we have been able to reduce the time to assign the cases from up to 4 months to 24 hours. Because of the different processes, the different entity, the fact that we had to send it through the mail and all of these things, how we did it before. Since the merger, we have been using electronic systems. We have more staff members. The staff members have all the electronic devices that they can use now, laptop. We're talking about tablets, the telephone with the service on it. So we are doing things electronically, and it has reduced the time to assign from 4 months up to 4 months, not always the case, to now 24 hours. So it is in an investigator's hand almost immediately after it has been reported. In terms of how we manage the cases, we have a lot of measures in place, statistical tools and otherwise, to be able to track cases, type, risk, turnover time, individuals, how they are performing. We are very strict about that. And those reports go up to the level of the minister each month. So if you are to quiz him, he may be able to tell you individual performances of the investigators. So there are 38 investigators in all, 34 field investigators, and 4 who work as part of the multi-agency desk, which means they sit at the Sissoko police station in Kingston, and 2 who sit with Sissoko in Western Region. So those multi-agency investigators, primarily, they deal with sexual abuse matters that have been reported to the police, joint work with them, so as to not re-traumatize the children, having them go through their experience over and over. We have been able to reduce the number of children who go into care by implementing the multi-agency desk, because they deal with at least 1,500 children per year. And those children prior to the multi-agency desk would find themselves often in care. And now, because we're doing the social services at the same time, what has happened is that we are able to give the intervention that's necessary and keep those children out of care. So that's a synopsis of, in terms of who are the investigators and what they do. Let us look at the cases. So in 2019, looking at the slide, you can see that negligence was the highest category at that time, and that was followed by physical abuse. Now this category that says 21% is miscellaneous, right? So it has a lot of different categories in it, like street children, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and so on. So it's a catch-all. So the largest category was negligence, and that was followed by physical abuse. Sexual abuse was 18%, and behavioral problems was 19% in 2019. Go ahead. And when you look at those figures, now Mr. Thompson talked about, he spoke about the figures in Kingston and St. Andrew being low in terms of the children who are in the parish. Well, I'm just going to talk about raw figures. In terms of the most cases that we receive, that would be Kingston and St. Andrew. Not cases per 1,000 children, but just raw numbers, right? Kingston and St. Andrew. And what I'd like you to see that's significant is that Kingston and St. Andrew, sexual abuse is the highest category that we receive in that parish. Well, this parish, right? Sexual abuse is the highest there. If you look at St. James, highest physical abuse. When you look at Westmoreland, you're looking at highest negligence. Kingston and St. Andrew also has a lot of behavioral problems, same for St. Catherine. So it's a large chart. I'm not going to go through every single detail on it, But that's a breakdown of how, maybe in the questions you may have some more for me to answer from this slide. All right? But it's how it is, the map of it across the island. Go ahead. So 2020, go ahead. So 2020, what is significant about this slide here is negligence has always been the largest category, but can you see a big increase in 2020? It's now from 22% to 25%. It was always the leading category, but it has gotten even higher since that time, right? And physical abuse right behind that. So sexual abuse accounted for 20% that time, physical 22%, negligence 25%, behavioral problems 19%, and the miscellaneous category got less, 14%. So there has been an increase in sexual abuse cases in terms of the percentage, not numbers, physical abuse cases and negligence cases, according to this slide here. So let us look at it in terms of parishes. So the sexual abuse cases, again, in terms of percentage, those have increased in the parishes of St. Thomas, St. Elizabeth, St. Mary, and Portland. And there has also been a slight increase in Hanover in terms of the sexual abuse cases. I'm talking about sexual abuse cases because it has recently dominated the media, and I think people may want to hear I'm picking that out because of the time, really. All right, next slide, please. So looking at the sexual abuse per quarter, because we're only just finished the first quarter, and we're comparing it between 2019, 2020, and 2021. I've given you some of those already in terms of what has increased and so on. Kingston and St. Andrew continues to be the parish with the highest recorded numbers of sexual abuse cases, although they have decreased, but still the highest in the island. Other hotspot areas with high numbers of sexual abuse cases are St. Catherine, Clarendon, St. Anne, and Westmoreland. All right. So I spoke about the multi-agency desk, and that is an opportunity for us to just look more at the victim. What's the profile of the victim and who are the people abusing them? And as I said, multi-agency desk is located at the Sissoka office which is part of the JCF, I'm sure you know. So comparing quarters again, January to March. So the sexual abuse cases that they dealt with there, 314 as opposed to 274 in 2020, slight decrease there. 146 of those abused by adults in 2019 to 135 in 2020. I want to see the significant numbers of children who are pregnant as based on sexual abuse that have been reported to Sissoka. So you're looking at 57 children up to 314. That's a significant number. And 60 children of the 274 pregnant, right? So prescribed persons, people are always asking, do we have a lot of prescribed persons who are abusing children? In terms of 314 children reported in that quarter, and 2 only being prescribed persons. But the 2 prescribed persons in that quarter were teachers, happen to be the 2 prescribed persons in the second in 2021 as well. They are not all, I'm not saying that's a leading category, don't get me wrong. It changes from time to time, but it happens to be what was the case in those quarters. We're looking at committal proceedings. It's an assessment, there's a psychosocial assessment that is done by the social workers at Sissoka to help with the cases that are being brought before the court. In 2020, there were 99 assessments done and 135 in 2021, that quarter. Despite the fact that the cases are less, more assessments are done. I don't really have an explanation for it, but I suspect that a lot of those cases are now from the previous year are now going through the courts. So So the sexual abuse cases processed through the multi-agency desk falling by 13%, we said that. And approximately 50% of children are being abused by adults. And 20% reported involve pregnancies. All right, so go to the next slide. So we're looking at the age of the victims. So 55% of the victims are ages, and the children who are being abused. I don't like that word. Let me say children who are being abused, right? Not victim. The ages, 55%, 12 to 15. We're looking at 21%, 7 to 11. 14%, 0 to 6. And yes, 16 to 17 too. We're talking about rape and you name it. So 16 to 17 is the 10%. So sexual assault by categories, you see where rape is the leading category in terms of sexual, 60% rape, 22% other type of sexual abuse, 11% buggery, 7% incest, right? So that is a general breakdown of what is happening in terms of the children who are being abused island-wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hewitt-Lindsay. All right, so in the interest of time, we're gonna take questions, but I asked the media just to direct at least 2 or 3 questions to the minister as he needs to leave. And then Mrs. Gage-Gray and the other members of the panel will take the other questions. Could you please use the raise hand feature so that you can be identified? Yes, Janet Silvera, please go ahead with your question. Your question is for the minister. Please unmute, Janet, or...
Thank you. I have to wait for someone to unmute me.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Yes, go ahead with your question, Janet.
Thank you very much. Yes, my question is to the minister. I would like to get an idea of how many children are between the ages of 0 to 3 in the system at this time. How will we determine, how will you determine rather, how loving those arms are that they're going into? And when will the Windsor home be ready? And how many can it accommodate? What's the option also for parents who can't manage the youngsters who go in front of the court?
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Silvera. Can you hear me? Hello?
Janet, are you hearing the minister?
Am I being heard by her?
Yes, sir.
The host is not allowing me.
Okay, Ms. Silvera.
No, go ahead. No,
we
go
apologize. All right, so there are about 155 children 0 to 3 in the system currently. There are, however, about 150 odd prospective adopters. So how do we determine what a loving arm is? The Cpfsa has a very robust process of vetting persons who are interested in being foster parents and who are interested in being adopters. Now, there is also support that is given to these families who want to foster and want to adopt. The fact of the matter is we will not ever be 100% sure if the arms that pretend to be loving are really loving. However, all we can do and what we try to do is put in place as many processes as necessary to ensure that whenever a child is placed with a family, that that child is being placed with the best family that they can be placed in. But I will suggest to you, though, that placing a child with a family is universally accepted as a better outcome than placing a child in a home. The fact is that child care facilities are a last resort for any child who comes into the child care ecosystem. We would prefer primarily that children are with their biological families. But we understand that there may be challenges that may cause that child to not be with that family, whether it's abuse, whether it be neglect, whether it be economic challenges. But then there's the other option of, let's say, relatives, aunts, grandparents, and so on. We explore that option as well. Maybe that doesn't work. We seek foster care, where we engage persons within the foster care system. Some have group homes, some take 1, 2, 3 children, and now we're including prospective adopters in the ecosystem. And at the last resort, when we cannot do anything else, we say child care facility, because the science is telling us that child care facilities are not good for children when compared to the other options. As it relates to when the Windsor home will be open, that will be approximately 2 months. The infrastructure work has been completed. We just need to ensure that the security system is there and that we have the appropriate staffing there as well. I don't know if there is... Did you ask what are the options for parents who cannot take care of their children? So the options...
How many people, how many children the Windsor home could accommodate, and I also
about 26.
What options were for the parents who can't manage their youngsters?
And 4 each or 2 each. So traditionally, a home would have 4 children per room, and that room is usually between 10 to 15 by 10. Is that correct? About 10 to 15 by 10. But because of COVID, the Windsor home is going to have 2 per room, and there are 26 rooms. 20 rooms, sorry. So you can see that it will house 40 children. When COVID is gone from us, we can double that from 40, but we don't want to go to 80, so we'll probably go 50 or 60, depending on what is necessary. As it relates to parents who cannot control their children, one of the good things about Jamaica is that we have a significant ecosystem of support services for parents. We have the National Parenting Commission. We have Cpfsa. We have NGOs that support parents. We have churches that support parents. We have the Office of the Children's Advocate that supports parents. And we have community groups that also support parents. If we're going to speak about support in terms of quote-unquote uncontrollable children, one of the things that we've been trying to do at the Cpfsa is the de-institutionalization of children, especially children who are not engaged in serious criminal activities. So a child that runs away from home is telling you a story. Why is this child running away from home? What are they running away from? What are they running to? And in many cases, you see children running away from home. They are running away from something. And it is the role of the social worker and the psychosocial experts, when that child goes before the courts under the new regime, to do a robust psychoanalysis and social analysis of that child to see whether or not is it that we need to spend some money and build a better bathroom so that the child doesn't have to bathe in the same bathroom that other members in the tenement yard are bathing in. Is it that we need to help them to get an internet so the child can feel comfortable staying in their house to do their virtual learning rather than going over next door? Is it that there's somebody within the environment who is abusing or attempting to abuse that child? Is it that there's a relationship taking place within that home that the child is uncomfortable with? So a lot of the times you see uncontrollable children, and I notice I keep quoting, go before the courts. And the reason they are uncontrollable is not because of them. It is because of the actions that are taking place within the environment in which they exist. And what we have been trying to do is intervening with parents, which is why we're going to launch a good parenting campaign. where we can start dealing with some of the challenges that exist, because a lot of the times children are even afraid to speak to their parents about some of the issues that are impacting them in their communities and in their homes. There's a recent case where, I don't remember if it was Ms. Gagegre who told me, where the child was brought before the court for running away. And the reason the child was running away, or the parent was bringing up the child to court to get the child out of the community, is not because the parent thought the child was a bad child. The reason the parent was bringing the child before the court is because the don sent for the child. And the parent did not want that child to stay in that community where she would have to send her daughter to the don. And if the Cpfsa is made aware of these situations, we can intervene and provide resources and support using the full power of the government to assist families that have challenges. I don't know if I've answered your question appropriately.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, you have.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Debbie Wright from RGR. You have a question for the Minister?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I wanted to get a timeline for the audit of children's homes. I don't know if you have one, as well as if you could give a little bit more information in relation to the plan of action being developed for street children. What are the aims of this? Have you done any surveys yet in relation to street children, and what are some of the options being looked at?
I'll let you answer the plan. All right, so the audit, when I became Minister of State in September, I had a meeting with Ms. Gagegre, and the audit was we were supposed to start the process of getting an auditor now, because it was supposed to be the first quarter of the new financial year. I said to Mrs. Gagegre that I want to start the process as early as possible. So we started the procurement process very early in the last quarter, probably about January or December. And we are able now to be engaging with the person who has qualified, so we can start laying out the work plan and the deliverables so that we can get the data. So I suspect that within 2 to 3 months, we will be able to have a lot of the data related to what we have asked the auditors to do. As it relates to street children, the street children issue is a very challenging issue, and I'm going to allow Ms. Gagegre to address it in detail, but I want to make a comment. People assume that street children are homeless, but I will suggest to you that majority of them are not. Majority of them actually go home and come back on the streets. They are there on the streets for an economic reason. And whenever someone puts their hand through the car door and gives a street child money, in many cases they're not performing a humanitarian action. They're performing a capitalist action of demand and supply. Where there is a demand, there will be a supply. If it is that person stop giving, as they call them, some of them are wiper boys, money at the stoplight, they will cease to exist. And what that does is that it clouds the real problem of some children who are on the streets because they have been abandoned, because they have run from home. So what you have now is a commingling of different issues, where you have street children who are there, who are really there for economic reasons. The parents send them out to wipe glass or to beg. And then you have another set of children who are there because they don't have a choice. They're either run away from home, they're running away from abuse, they have been whatever. So the survey, we did a survey a couple of years ago, and it looked at some of these variables. And where we are now in the process is trying to look at the intervention. So there's one suggestion in the market that we should create hostels to assist, but that doesn't really work, because if a child is earning $50,000 a week on the road, there's no hostel that is going to provide that sort of economic incentive. And one of the things that we notice is that when you take some of these kids off the street and you bring them before the courts and the parents come and they demonstrate their ability to take care, and the Cpfsa say, well, okay, we'll work with the parents and we start investing in the infrastructure in the homes and helping them. They send back out the kids a month later because they are using these children as an economic benefit. And it brings to us the other consideration about parental rights. And I'm not going to answer it today, but it's a question that we're going to have to answer as a society. Do we need to look at a regime or a process where we start removing parental rights from some of these parents who consistently demonstrate behaviors that put our children in peril? For example, parents who continue to use their children for economic benefit. A woman who using her daughter for sexual favors, it's the same category, probably worse than a woman or a man who is using their son to go and wipe car glass. While the sexual abuse is significant and great and depressing and challenging, we find that the girls sometimes are being used for sex, while the boys are being used for wiping car glass. And that is something that we have to grapple with here at the Cpfsa, because the policy formulation to solve a problem like that is long-term and multifaceted. It has to deal with interventions at the family level as to how parents see children and how they see the children in terms of what rights do children have. Are the babies ornaments and the toddlers means of economic aid, and the adult children pension, as traditionally we see them in some cases? Or are they human beings with rights who deserve to be protected, and we need to put in the necessary policies, laws, and systems to protect them? Ms. Gage-Gray?
Right, so to answer the question on the street children, children living and working on the street. So we did the survey basically to identify the...
Look in the camera. Look in the camera.
Oh, look in the camera, sorry. Basically to identify the pull and push factors that causes these children to be on the street. And some of the findings, Minister did alluded to some of those of this survey. One, that the children on the streets have parents that they go home to, significant percentage of them. They are in school and attend school and tend to come out on the street outside of normal school hours. That it is a significant economic benefit for them and their families to be on the street. That they are abused on the street because older boys or other persons tend to abuse them when they are there. And so the survey that was done on the reports with the framework has been submitted for cabinet submission to be sent to, for cabinet submission and approval for the framework, and that we believe will be out within another month or so where we can start to action. So our efforts so far are to identify the children that we find on the street. They are very swift. You go today, you pick them up, they run, they come back, or you take a set off and another set comes back. So I think the research has shown us that we really need to deal with the issues and the factors that are causing them to be on the street. We have worked with, we find the children coming from set communities, and the report really details, and the report, once we get the cabinet approval, can be released, really detail where the communities that these children are coming from. And so a lot of community intervention, a lot of working with the families, you know, parenting support to have those children not being on the street. But once there's a demand, once they are given funds on the street, then you're going to still have them come in there. But we have to work with the communities so that we are able to provide the support for the families for have them there. But we'll release the report as soon as we get the go-ahead to do so.
Thank you, Mrs. Gage-Gray. Are there any other questions for the Minister? I see Krista Campbell has her hand up. Crystal, you have a question for the minister? Could you please unmute?
Yes, I do.
Yes,
Good
go ahead.
afternoon.
Yes, Krista, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Morgan. All right, so you've spoken about the assessment of children before.
I think you have a network challenge. Hello?
Oh, you're not hearing me so well?
I'm hearing you perfect
Yes,
now.
you're not hearing?
I'm hearing you now perfectly.
We're hearing you now, Crystal. Go ahead with your
Right, so I
question.
was speaking to your about the assessment of children going into school, but I would like to know of any plan probably a national training for those who will be in charge of caring for these children in state care.
All right.
That's one. And when you say the science says an institute, you hear me?
Yes, we are. Go ahead.
Yes.
When you say the science speaks of, when you say the science says institutionalization is the least effective option, I assume you're speaking about for children with behavioral challenges, right?
All children.
Specifically juvenile detention facilities. And if it does include child care facilities, can you give more details about?
We've lost the last part, Crystal. Go again.
Why these are the least effective options? And when you speak to the science, he's saying that institutionalization is the least effective option. If it includes childcare facilities, can you give more details to why these will be and where
We're losing you on the third question, Crystal.
Can I answer the other questions and then?
All right, let us, hold on, Crystal, let us take.
Physical abuse as opposed to a child perspective.
All right, Crystal, we'll take the first two questions. For the third question, you'll need to repeat that one after the minister has responded to the first two.
All right, so as it relates to training for caregivers, so there is a work being done with HEART.
To have them certified.
Right, and one of the things that I have spoken to the Cpfsa, Ms. Gage-Greer, about is signing MOUs with various tertiary institutions to have courses that focus particularly on the whole aspect of managing childcare facilities and also managing children who are in childcare facilities. The reality of it is that our childcare ecosystem evolved not as a plan but as a necessity. And what we are trying to do, and we've been trying to do it with the several reports that we have had over the years, is to actually create an ecosystem of childcare in Jamaica that has accountability, that is transparent, and that can give the children the best option. Training for caregivers is one of the core components of it, because what we're realizing is that, for example, traditionally you have a lovely house mother, probably a lady from the community. For example, where I am from in my constituency, a lady from the community who everybody respects and loves, and she has been the house mother for 50 years, for 40 years. So that institutional capacity is built in within one individual, where she is functioning traditionally by instinct rather than protocol. She knows how to take care of pitney, and she has been taking care of these pitney for the last 20 years, and she probably is a member of the church that manage the children's home, and they say, could you manage the children's home for us? And she does. What is happening is that those people are retiring. And what we're having now is that we're hiring persons within the system who may not have the institutional knowledge that the house mother would have had traditionally, nor do they have the academic level of competence that to deal with the modern challenges related to children. And the modern challenges related to children are much different from the traditional challenges that existed previously. So what we're going to have to be doing, and what we're working on, is trying to see how we can start using the education system to encourage a new generation of child care experts, not just people to manage homes, but people to look at the whole psychosocial challenges that we're facing as a society. One of the things that the Ministry of Education is looking at is how we can increase the amount of psychologists in the system. And we have already had conversations with the Cpfsa head and the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education to increase the amount of psychologists so that the psychologists that deal with the education system also are part of the ecosystem of childcare, so that instead of duplicating the work we're doing, we are sharing. Institutionalization versus non-institutionalization. The comment I made was that a children's home is not the best place for any child. And I will stand by that comment because the studies have shown that the best place for a child is with their biological family. However, there are circumstances in which your biological family does not treat you in a manner where you should stay with them. So we say, okay, what about the grandmother? What about the auntie? What about our uncle? Does anybody who is capable and love this child want this child? So we move to them. Let's say there is no such person. Is there a foster program or an adoption program that this child can be engaged in? Let us explore that. If all of those things fail, then we have no choice but to say, until we can find whether adoption or foster care, this child has to be in a child care facility. But there is another category of children who also have challenges in terms of behavior, and that is where the juvenile facilities come in, and there are different types. So the ones that Cpfsa govern are actually places of safety, right, Ms. Gage? These are not prisons. I have one in my constituency. Is it St. Paul's? St. Augustine Boys Home, where young men who have behavioral challenges go, and we provide psychosocial support to them to try and reform them so that they can become. Some of them even transition from the place of safety into traditional homes. Some of them transition from the place of safety into adoption or to foster care. But then there's the other side of it where you have the Metcalf Street types of facilities where children who have come into conflict with the law for serious offenses reside. Murders, rapes, larceny, you name it, assaults. What I'm trying to do and what the government is trying to do is to ensure that if it is that you have a child who has done something that they should be in a prison, because the courts have charged them and the police have charged them and they have killed somebody, murdered, raped, etc., then we have no contention with putting them at Metcalf Street or wherever the government, the Department of Correctional Services sees fit. But there's a category of children in a gray area where they're not charged with a crime, but they have behavioral issues which can be remedied by the appropriate intervention. But if you put them in this Metcalf Street where they're now exposed to hardened criminals, you have 16-year-olds murdering people now, and you put a child who is a runaway or a young girl who the parent thinks that she is becoming sexually precocious and cannot control them, so you send her to Metcalf or wherever they send her. What you're doing is you're exposing that vulnerable child now to a criminal ecosystem that I am not confident can assist her in the way that she needs to be assisted. So we're working with the Ministry of National Security. Minister Samuda and I have been working well together. Ms. Gage Gray is a part of the committee to deal with these situations. And I can say to you, we have the last time I counted, we had about 40 of them, children who are deemed uncontrollable. But the interesting thing about it is that there are children who are deemed uncontrollable in the Cpfsa ecosystem. It is just by chance or the luck of the draw that the child might end up at the St. James Parish Court or the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court or the Portmore Family Court, sorry. But there are tons of other parish courts, family courts in other parishes that are not sending uncontrollable kids to penal institutions. And the Cpfsa has the capacity and we have had the plan for a long time. We have the homes, we have the institutions to deal with these children with the behavioral issues. We need to put more resources into psychosocial intervention, right? But we believe that the best place for a child is not a children's home, but there are times when the best place available to help that child is a child care facility. I don't know if I answered the question, Krista. You can ask your third question now.
Yes, you answered it in a lot of details. And continuing what you said, the last point would be, I'm wondering if in the new dispensation, this rebranding, if you will, of the child care sector, if more attention will be placed in properly placing the children at the different institutions, because you will find a lot of times children's homes that is more of a melting pot of kids with different challenges, some more severe than others, and some who probably needed to be in another facility that can better cater to their deeper issues. Say a child who has been sexually abused or physically abused over an extended period of time and will have serious behavioral challenges, as opposed to a child who's just been neglected and probably is not as badly impacted as the other.
So, thank you, Krista. There are different types of homes that we have. Even you may see, what's the one in Summerfield called?
Summerfield Girls Home.
Summerfield Girls, but there's another one on the hill, St. Monica's. So there are two girls' homes. Well, one is mixture. So St. Monica's is a mixture, and Summerfield is girls. And I have three of them. I also have the St. Augustine, which is the boys' facility. And the two girls' homes are totally different from each other, in the sense that the Summerfield Girls' Home is a more secure facility. And I will not tell you why it's more secure, but it's a more secure facility. It has security features because the girls are older and some of them have uncontrollable tendencies, as they call them. I don't like that word. Behavioral challenges. While St. Monica's has a different type of security arrangement because a lot of the children there are actually like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, little babies, little children. So even within the child care ecosystem, we have done things to segment the children who go to particular. So like, for example, Manning's home in St. Elizabeth would not have a child of a particular type of behavior. While Maxfield, which is a totally different type of children's home. So within the Cpfsa, they know the type of institution that this child can go to based on the psychosocial assessment that they make. I will not say to you that it's perfect and that is something that we're working on, but based on how the child comes into the system, based on the social report that the judge orders before the fit person order can be given, we know where this child is best placed. The other thing is, part of the reason why 0 to 3 is so important is because we do not want a child under 3 who is at the beginning of their socialization experience to be exposed to particular behaviors and tendencies of the older children, many of them who are abused. So one of the biggest fears I have in dealing with children in the child care system is Jamaica has a culture of sexualizing children very early. And a lot of the children who come into the child care ecosystem are already sexualized. So imagine putting a young child who is not sexualized in a home with children who are sexualized. And it doesn't mean sexualization by action, you know. It can be sexualization by words. It can be older children infusing particular thoughts into a younger, vulnerable child, which is why we are so careful how we place children. But if you have an opportunity with a child who has not been subjected to the challenges that have made the other children vulnerable, to not place them at risk in that environment, to place them with a family, then I think it's a good thing that we do it. So we're very committed to it. We have the capacity to do it. A lot of the adopters who are on the adoption list are saying, yes, we want to help. A lot of the foster parents are saying that they want to help, and new people are coming on board. We had Foster Week the other day, and we had many inquiries about persons who want to be foster parents. And we think that the direction we're going in terms of reforming the system, in terms of de-institutionalization, is the best approach going forward.
All right, thank you, Minister. Any other questions for Minister? Do we have any questions on YouTube? Caroline for Minister? No. Okay. All right.
You made me miss Parliament.
Okay, so we continue. All right. Do we have any other questions from the media?
It's the law meeting.
Yes, I have a question for Mrs. Dean.
Who is it, please? Please.
Krista Campbell.
Oh, Krista, okay.
Yes. All right, so I want to know if there is a reintegration program for the children when they leave state care or privately run child care facilities, and also may I have an update on the children going to school.
Okay, so we have a reintegration program, twofold. One, once children come into care, our efforts are to get them back to their families. So there is a program that we call family reintegration, and we have officers assigned to that program that would work with the family, work with the child to get the child back home. So it depends on the reason why the child was brought into care in the first place. Some of it is economic, some of it is an abuse situation where you can do parental training and you work on the relationship between the child and the parent to get them back home. Now you have children who are transitioning from care, because you know the law says a child is anyone between 0 and 18. At 18, then legally the child care system is not responsible for that child, legally. However, we appreciate and understand that not all children getting to 18 are ready to go on their own. And so from about age 16 or sometimes before, we start on a plan to see how we are going to successfully transition them. And the plan includes plans for education, what are the educational goals that we have for that child, what is the aptitude that the child has, and which programs they are more likely to get into. So you have support there for CSEC, for vocational, all of those. We do life skills training for those children as well to prepare them for the world of work. We have a transitional living program. We had a project, a 5-year project, which ended December, that gave us a kind of blueprint as to how we are going to successfully transition children to adulthood. And part of that program was centered around training caregivers to deliver and to work through life skills with the children. We had the vocational training. We have entrepreneurship training where youngsters were asked to pitch and they were given some sums to do their own businesses. We have children in tertiary institutions, and this year we have over 300 such children in tertiary institutions. We do give them a stipend and we do provide housing assistance. We have the LMR, which is the apartment complex at Lady Musgrave, that we have children now who are given accommodation and are either working in school or doing other activities that would support, that we support them in those ventures. So there is a plan and there is a program to have children successfully transition. You have some children who might have relatives that they can go back to, and so we work with them to get back to those families. Sometimes those families might need support. They might need an extra room, they might need an extra bed. And so we work with the children to give them some exit kit that they can go home with. So those who are going on their own, we assist them through our sponsors and supporters. So, you know, they might need a bed, they might need a stove, just basic furniture to start up living on their own. And so we provide that kind of a support. We also provide tuition support through the Ministry of Education for all of those going to tertiary and other institutions. Payment for exam fees for others. So we have a program that is assisting them. Update on Clifton, the police is still conducting their investigations. I also think that the OCA as well is doing their investigations, and we await those reports. We continue to give support to the home by our social workers visiting and making sure that the children there are taken care of. But the investigations continue.
Thank you, Mrs. Gage-Gray. Do we have any other questions? Janet, you have your hand raised still. Do you have a question?
My hand was raised earlier. It didn't go back down.
Okay. So we'll go to a question that's posted on YouTube. This question is for you, Stacey. After the cases are assigned in 24 hours, how soon after, on average, does the investigations begin?
Okay, so when they're assigned,
look in the camera.
Okay. So the cases are assigned in 24 hours. We go by risk categories. So high risk cases, for instance, there are 24 hours in which the action should take place. But even among high risk cases are children who are in imminent danger, and the response to that is immediate. When it comes to other cases, we are averaging now about 48 hours for other cases that do not fall within the high-risk categories. Now, when a case is initiated, the time, in terms of the time it takes to investigate the matter, is not, for instance, if you initiate it today, the investigation doesn't finish tomorrow. So the investigation, in terms of the time it takes, is dependent on the circumstances of the case. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to change a few details. So we had a case, for instance, that it's about a few years ago, had a case where it was reported that the children were not attending school, and the mother was being negligent. And when we went on that case, so we initiated it quickly, but that case took us a few months to wrap up, because we worked out that there were 7 children, none of them were registered. The mother delivered them at home on her own. They didn't have proper names, and we had to go through the search just to check that they were maybe in fact not registered. We helped her come up with names. We had to get them their first immunization. Mother was taken to the clinic to get checkups and to get, advisory birth control and all of that for the first time, test, and the children could not read. So in terms of getting them to school, the placement had to work. And in that case, there was a little complaint that the matter was not being dealt with, whilst for the general public, maybe the understanding would be, for it to be dealt with, they would want to see removals. But as the minister said, we focus on keeping families together, right? So that said, it took a few months for us to get all the matters addressed in the appropriate way to empower the family to be able to take care of those children and for them to even start school because of what the situation was, right? So in terms of when it is just going back to the initial question, when it is actioned immediately to now 48 hours. We can do it now based on the fact that the cases have gone down and so on. But for you to see from outside in, it may look like it's taking us longer than that, but not really.
Thank you, Stacey. Okay. Do we have any other questions? No further questions? Debbie and Janet, Krista, Robian, we have come to the end of our press briefing, our quarterly press briefing. We want to thank you for staying with us and for agreeing to join this conversation about child protection and what we are doing here at the Cpfsa. I want to thank Mrs. Gage Gray, Stacy, and Warren, and our Honorable Minister Morgan for facilitating. So take care, everybody, and we will share the slides. And if you media persons have further questions, you can send them to us. I think you by now have my contact number. It's 469-4100. 469-4100, and I will respond accordingly. Thank you and keep safe.